Hi class, and welcome back to the second part of Module 3, Part 1, where we're going to actually work out some of the examples. So if you want to go ahead and pull up the live classroom Excel sheet, then you can go ahead and follow along with me here. Okay, so again, I'm just coming from the notes, and I'm going into my Excel where I have all the examples. Okay, so our first example, I want to find the critical value corresponding to a 95% confidence level, given that the sample size has n equals 15. So this is the first thing I'm going to type in is 15. Now everything else I'm going to do is I'm going to use the equations with Excel. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to compute is my degrees of freedom. Well, remember your degrees of freedom is equal to n minus 1. I'm going to go up to here and I'm just going to go equals. I'm going to type that box, just hit it, minus 1 and hit return. Okay, so I have my degrees of freedom. So step 2, and again, I'm just referring to slide 13, what I was just on. I need to calculate my alpha. So remember, your alpha is 1 minus the confidence level divided by 100. Okay, so I'm going to go in here. So equals 1 minus. Okay, and I'm going to put this in parentheses. So it's my confidence. So in this case, we have 95% confidence. So 95 divided by 100. Close those parentheses and hit enter. So I get 0.05. Oops, and I accidentally did that in the wrong box. So I'm just going to redo that really fast. Equals 1 minus parentheses 95 divided by 100. So now we have alpha, and now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to calculate that critical value. Okay, so again, I'm using that equation that I gave on slide 13. So that is, so equals, so T inverse, and then I'm going to click this one right here. So my probability, that's that alpha. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab my alpha, and then your degree of freedom. Okay, so that's this box right here. And then I'm going to hit enter. And I get my score there. So 2.144. So I'm just going to leave this like that. I don't need to round it here because, again, this is where I'm showing my work. And if you were to go ahead and write that on your Word document, then you could go ahead and round. Okay. So example 2, very similar to what we did with example 1. So kind of like what we're doing with a lot of these videos is go ahead and pause the video and come back and check your work. Okay, welcome back. So first thing you do here is I need to go ahead and put in my sample. So my sample size here is 50. Okay, my degrees of freedom, I'm going to type that in, equals, okay, so that minus 1, I'm going to hit enter. Next thing you need to do is go ahead and compute your alpha. So again, you always have to do equals. So I have 1 minus, okay, and then I'm going to go parentheses. My confidence level I want this time is 99%, so 99 divided by 100. Hit enter there. And now I can go ahead and find my critical value. So again, I'm going to type in that equation I gave you on slide 13. So equals T dot in. Okay, there we go. So my probability, again, that's the alpha. I'm just going to go ahead and click it. And then I need to go to my degrees of freedom, which I have on that one there. Okay, and hit enter. Oop, and I think I just put in one too many. There we go. Just put in one too many parentheses. The nice thing about Excel is if you do make a mistake like you saw there, they'll let you know what you did. Okay, so hopefully you guys did well with that. Let's go ahead and go back to our slides. Okay, so again, we just did these two examples here on Excel. Okay, so next thing I want to talk about is my margin of error. So this is that step 2. So most problems you'll be using this. So depending if your population standard deviation is known or not, you will either have to use a z or a t-score to calculate your margin of error. So when your standard deviation is unknown, we're going to use the following method to calculate the margin of error. So I know that looks kind of calculated or complicated, but it's not too bad because again, we're just going to be plugging that into Excel. And then again, your degrees of freedom is n minus 1. Okay, so again, with this example, I'm going to go back to that Excel sheet so we can practice typing, into that. Okay, so again, this is the first page you're on. I'm just going to go down to the bottom and click margin of error. So example 3. 900 high school freshmen were randomly selected for a national survey. Among survey participants, the mean grade point average, GPA, was 2.7, and the standard deviation was 0.4. What is the margin of error, assuming a 95% confidence level? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and fill in the things that we know. So we'll start here, n. So again, that is my sample. So we have 900 students. Okay. Well, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find that degree of freedom because I'm just subtracting 1. Okay, so equals 900 minus 1. Oops, sorry. Equals, there we go. I want to see that work, minus 1. Of course, now it's not liking this. We'll just start over. Equals minus 1. Enter. Okay. So now, again, I'm just following the same steps I did for the first example. I'm going to go ahead and find my alpha. Okay. So again, with your alpha, that's where you do with the confidence level. So I have equals 1 minus, with this one, we want a confidence interval of 95%. So parentheses 95 divided by 100. Hit return. So I have 0.05. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to find my critical value. So again, I'm just doing the same things we did with that first example. Okay. So equals t dot, okay, here it is. Okay, so again, that probability, that is that alpha, and my degrees of freedom. I'm going to go ahead and put that in, hit enter. Okay, so I get 1.96. Okay, so now I can actually go ahead and find that margin of error. So the S, okay, if you remember correctly from that slide, your S is the standard deviation for a sample. So my standard deviation was 0.4. And in this case, I'm just going to type that in. So 0.4. And now I can go ahead and find that margin of error. So I'm going to use this equation here. Okay, so let's go ahead and type that in. So equals, well, I have my critical value, so I'm going to click that. And then times, and then, so again, I'm going to times it by my standard deviation, divided by, and now it's the square root, so I'm going to type that, square root, pops up nicely for me, of that number there, and hit enter, and now I'm given my margin of error. Okay. So again, kind of a lot of steps with that one, but just go nice and slow with it and you'll be fine. So going back to here, so again, that's the example we just did. Okay, so our upper and lower limits, that's going to be step 3. So after you find the margin of error, you want to take that value and add and subtract it from the sample statistic. Okay, So again, that's this last step here. So your x bar, that is the mean. And E, again, E is your measure of error that we just found. And this is our last step. Okay, so let's look at this last example. So again, same problem. So 900 high school freshmen were randomly selected for a national survey. Among survey participants, the mean grade point average was 2.7 and the standard deviation was 0.4. What is a 95% confidence interval? So now I'm going to actually do that last step. Okay. So here, okay, again, I'm just going to take, so in this case, my x bar, let's identify some things. So my mean, in this case, in the sample was 2.7. Okay, and we found our error here. Okay, so it'd be 0.026. I'm just going to follow this equation then. Okay, so I have 2.7 minus 0.026 is less than mu, which is less than, again on this side, 2.7 plus 0.026. Okay, and then when I add that, add and subtract, I get 2.674 is less than mu, which is less than 2.726. Okay, so we are 95% confident that the limits of 2.674 and 2.726 contain the value of the population mean. So just a review. So confidence intervals allow us to predict a population parameter based on a sample statistic. The population parameter we concentrated on was mu. Again, that's the population mean. And we use, this is our third step, where we just add and subtract our margin of error. And the formula for that margin of error is this right here. And again, you want to make sure you plug that into Excel to show your work. Well, that is everything for Module 3, Part 1. If you have any questions, join me in the live session on Wednesday when I go over this, or on Saturday for student